Good morning, students. In today's lecture, we would discuss about the anatomy of the internal ear. Internal ear is also known as labyrinth. Why labyrinth? Because it is a very complex network like structure. It is a closed system. It contains membranous sacs and ducts within bony cavities and canals. So it is a complex network structure. It has two parts, the membranous labyrinth and the bony labyrinth. Membranous labyrinth is fluid-filled intercommunicating membranous sacs and ducts which lie within the complex intercommunicating bony cavities and canals. Membranous labyrinth contains endolymph and the bony labyrinth contains perilymph, and it is present in the petrous part of the temporal bone. In this figure, you can see the blue portion is the bony labyrinth. It contains perilymph present in the petrous part of the temporal bone. This orange color portion is the membranous labyrinth present within the bony labyrinth, and it contains endolymph. So these are the two parts of the internal ear. In this figure you can see this is the middle ear cavity. This is the internal ear. This is the bony labyrinth of the internal ear present within the petrous part of the temporal bone. In this figure, you can see the petrous portion of the temporal bone has been highlighted. So the bony labyrinth consists of cochlea, vestibule and semicircular canals. In this figure, you can see this anterior part is the cochlea of the internal ear. This middle portion is the vestibule, and posteriorly you have three semicircular canals. The membranous labyrinth, anteriorly it has a spiral duct of cochlea which has the organ of Corti, which is receptor organ for hearing. Within the vestibule there is utricle and saccule with maculae which are receptor for static balance. Posteriorly there are semicircular ducts with cristae which are receptors for kinetic balance. This is a figure of the membranous labyrinth. These are the semicircular ducts with the cristae. This is the utricle with the maculae. This is the saccule with the maculae. And this is the spiral cochlear duct. In today's lecture, we will talk about cochlea. So cochlea resembles a shell of a common snail. It has a modulus. So what is a modulus? It is a conical central axis around which the cochlear canal makes 2 or 3 quarter turns. This is the modulus in this figure. This bony portions that you can see is the modulus. This is the base of the modulus. This is the apex of the modulus, and around this conical central axis the cochlea is able to make those turns. So the modulus, it has an apex and a base. The apex of the modulus is anterior-superiorly located, and it is located anterior-superior to the medial wall of the middle ear. This is the medial wall of the middle ear, and it is located anterior-superior to that medial wall. And the base of the modulus is pointing towards the internal acoustic meatus, which is this. This is the internal acoustic meatus. So the base, it points towards the fundus of the internal acoustic meatus, and the apex is anterior superior and it points towards the medial wall of the middle ear. The modulus has a spiral lamina, which is a spiral ridge of bone. It projects from the modulus and it partially divides the cochlear canal into an upper part and a lower part. The upper part is the scala vestibuli and the lower part is the scala tympani. The divisions are completed by basilar membrane, and the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani, they communicate at the apex of cochlea by a small opening which is helicotrema. In this figure you can see this bony portion is the modulus, and this spiral ridge of bone, this light purple color, is the spiral lamina, which divides the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani partially. This purple is that spiral lamina, spiral ridge of bone projecting from the modulus, dividing the cochlear canal into scala vestibuli and scala tympani partially. This you can see the point where the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani communicate at the apex of the cochlear canal. There is a small opening which is known as helicotrema. This opening can also be seen in this figure. This is helicotrema. Now we are done with the bony labyrinth, the membranous labyrinth. So the membranous labyrinth, anteriorly, it consists of the duct of cochlea, which is also known as scala media. So scala media, where is it present? It occupies the middle part of the cochlear canal, that is between the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani. So this green portion that you're seeing here, this green portion is the scala media, which is present between the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani. Floor of the scala media is formed by basilar membrane, which supports the spiral organ of Corti. The roof is formed by vestibular membrane, or also known as Reisner's membrane, and the outer wall is formed by the bony wall of the cochlea. So in this figure you can see the floor. This is the scala media in between the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani. The floor is formed by the basilar membrane. This is the organ of Corti. The roof is formed by the vestibular membrane, and outer wall is formed by the cochlear, the bony wall of the cochlea. Then within the scala media there is organ of Corti, which is the end organ for hearing. It contains the rods of Corti and outer inner hair cells, and these hair cells are embedded in gelatinous membrane, which is known as membrana tectoria. So this is the magnified organ of Corti, which is present in the scala media. You can see the rods of Corti, and you can see the outer and inner hair cells, and they are embedded into this tectorial membrane, gelatinous membrane above. Spiral ganglion, basically it is a group of neuronal cell bodies, and it innervates the organ of Corti. So in the previous figure, here you can see this is that spiral ganglion, and the peripheral processes, the bipolar cells of the peripheral process innervates the organ of Corti. Bipolar cells basically are cells that have one axon and one dendrite, and these are special type of sensory neurons. They help in the transmission of various senses like hearing, touch, smell, taste. So also in this figure you can see this is that spiral ganglion, and you can see that the peripheral processes of the spiral ganglion are distributed to the organ of Corti in the scala media. You can see here These are the peripheral processes that innervate the organ of Corti. This is also the same figure where you can see the organ of Corti, and you can see the scala media, the scala vestibuli, the scala tympani, the cochlear canal, the spiral ganglion, its processes, the enlarged organ of Corti with the hair cells, with the rods of Corti, with the tectorial membrane, spiral ganglion. Here you can see the spiral ganglion is located inside a spiral canal. This is the spiral ganglion, and it is placed inside the spiral canal, which is present within the modulus. There is one more part in the membranous labyrinth of the cochlea, that is the ductus reunions. So the cochlear duct posteriorly connects with the saccule. This is the cochlear duct. It connects posteriorly with the saccule with the help of ductus reunions. There is a duct. जैसा हमने कहा था, membranous labyrinth is a intercommunicating channel which has membranous sac and membranous ducts. So this ductus reunions is that duct which connects the cochlear duct posteriorly with the saccule. The arteries that supply the internal ear, mainly it is supplied by the basilar artery, that is the labyrinthine branch of the basilar artery, and partly by the posterior auricular artery, that is the stylomastoid branch of the posterior auricular artery. Venous drainage of the internal ear is with the help of labyrinthine vein, which drains into the superior petrosal sinus and the transverse sinus. So that's all about the cochlea, that is the bony labyrinth, cochlea, and the membranous labyrinth, the duct of the cochlea. We will cover the remaining portion of the internal ear in the next lecture.